Welcome to Insights IAS UPSC Current Affairs series. In today's session, we'll cover the Employees Provident Funds Scheme 2026, the Bundibugyo Virus Disease, Vikram-1, India's first private orbital rocket, the Borjuli Wetland, and in mapping, we'll explore the strategically important Gulf of Aden. So, without any further delay, let's get started. Let's begin with the Employees Provident Funds Scheme 2026. Here is the context, and this is important, so note it carefully. The Ministry of Labour and Employment has notified the Employees Provident Funds or EPF Scheme 2026, and this replaces the EPF scheme of 1952. This has been done under the implementation of the Code on Social Security 2020. So, what exactly is this new scheme? The EPF Scheme 2026 is India's new statutory provident fund framework, replacing the Employees Provident Funds Scheme of 1952. It has been notified under the Code on Social Security 2020 to modernize provident fund administration while retaining the existing retirement benefits that subscribers already enjoy. Now coming to the aim behind this scheme, it seeks to provide financial security and retirement savings for employees, and at the same time, it operationalizes the Code on Social Security 2020 through this modernized provident fund framework. In terms of who administers this, the nodal ministry is the Ministry of Labour and Employment, while the executive authority responsible for implementation is the Employees Provident Fund Organization or EPFO. This EPFO angle is absolutely critical for prelims, since the ministry versus executing body distinction is a classic elimination point in statement-based questions. Now let us go through the key features carefully, because this is where prelims questions are most likely to come from. First, this scheme supersedes the 1952 scheme entirely and brings Provident Fund administration under the umbrella of the Code on Social Security 2020. Second, there is seamless continuity for existing members. Existing EPF subscribers automatically continue as members and no fresh enrollment or transfer of accumulated balances is required. Now, coming to the contribution rules, and this is a section aspirants often get wrong, so pay close attention. The employer and employee continue to contribute 12% of wages each, though this is 10% for notified establishments. This mandatory contribution applies only up to the statutory wage ceiling of Rs 15,000 per month, and the mandatory contribution therefore remains Rs 1,800 each, which works out to 12% of Rs 15,000. This is a classic elimination point for UPSC, so imprint this combination carefully. Beyond this, employees may voluntarily contribute above the wage ceiling or at rates exceeding 12%. And employers may make matching voluntary contributions. Such additional contributions can, however, be reduced or discontinued later. Let us now pause here and hold this point, because the next area is one of the most exam-relevant changes in the entire scheme, the simplified withdrawal categories. Earlier, there were 13 separate withdrawal categories. These have now been consolidated into just 3 broad categories. The first is essential needs, covering illness, education, and marriage. The second is housing needs, covering purchase, construction, home loan repayment, and renovation. The third is special circumstances, covering specified emergencies. Do not confuse the number of old categories with the new ones. UPSC may present this incorrectly in a statement. So remember, 13 collapsed into 3. This is where aspirants lose marks. Now, coming to the minimum balance requirement, members must retain 25% of their total contributions as a minimum retirement corpus, and the remaining eligible balance can be withdrawn subject to scheme conditions. On withdrawal provisions specifically, for illness, up to 100% of the eligible balance can be withdrawn after 12 months of membership. For education, withdrawal is permitted after 12 months, but a maximum of 10 times. For marriage, up to 100% of the eligible balance can be withdrawn, with a maximum of 5 withdrawals allowed. For housing, up to 75% of the total balance is permitted after 12 months of membership, again with a maximum of 5 withdrawals. If you remember nothing else from this cluster, hold on to these numbers. 25% retained, and marriage and illness both allow up to 100%, while housing caps at 75%. Moving on, the scheme introduces protection for contract workers through the concept of a principal employer, who remains ultimately responsible for PF contributions in cases where contractors fail to comply. On employer compliance, employers must now submit Aadhaar, PAN, the Universal Account Number or UAN, wage details, and monthly as well as event-based statutory returns. There is also a strong digital governance push here, with greater emphasis on Aadhaar-linked UAN and bank accounts to support faster withdrawals and portability. EPFO is also enabling UPI-based withdrawals and WhatsApp-based member services, which is a fairly unique and testable detail. For international workers, existing provisions continue unchanged, and existing international members remain covered under this new framework. And finally, on retirement corpus protection, partial withdrawals are permitted, but this is always balanced against preservation of long-term retirement savings through that mandatory minimum balance requirement. So, to quickly recap for your exam, the EPF scheme 2026 replaces the 1952 scheme under the Code on Social Security 2020 with EPFO as the executing authority under the Ministry of Labour and Employment. Remember the 12% contribution rule capped at a Rs 15,000 wage ceiling, giving Rs 1,800 each. The consolidation of 13 withdrawal categories into 3, and the mandatory 25% minimum retirement corpus with withdrawal caps of 100% for illness and marriage and 75% for housing. Keep this cluster of numbers fresh because this topic is tailor-made for a statement-based prelims question. Now, coming to our next topic, let us understand the Bundibugyo Virus Disease or BVD. The context here is important. The World Health Organization has added the first molecular diagnostic test for the Bundibugyo virus, abbreviated as BDBV, to its emergency use listing or EUL. So what exactly is this disease? Bundibugyo virus disease is a severe, highly infectious and frequently fatal zoonotic disease in humans. It is caused by the Bundibugyo virus, which is one of the distinct viral species belonging to the Ortho-Ebola virus genus, commonly referred to as the Ebola virus group. For prelims, note this carefully. The genus name is Ortho-Ebola virus, not simply Ebola virus, and this is a subtle naming distinction UPSC could test directly. Let us now understand its origin and transmission pathway. The natural reservoir is believed to be fruit bats, which host the virus in wild ecosystems. The spillover event into humans is initially triggered through close handling or contact with the blood, raw meat, or bodily secretions of infected wildlife, such as bats or non-human primates like monkeys and apes. Once inside human communities, person-to-person spread happens rapidly through direct contact with broken skin or mucous membranes coming into contact with the blood, organs, saliva, vomit, or other bodily fluids of infected individuals. It also spreads through contaminated surfaces, unsterilized medical gear, and unsafe traditional burial practices. Now let us move to the key epidemiological characteristics, and this is a dense cluster, so let us take it slowly. The incubation period ranges from 2 to 21 days, and importantly, patients are not infectious before symptoms develop, which reduces transmission during this incubation window. The case fatality ratio is high, with previous outbreaks recording between 30 and 50% fatality, making early detection and treatment absolutely critical. Diagnostically, this disease is tricky because early symptoms resemble malaria, typhoid, and other tropical fevers, making clinical diagnosis difficult. Confirmation requires PCR or antigen and antibody laboratory tests. This is exactly why the WHO's new molecular diagnostic listing from our context line matters so much. And here is a fact many aspirants miss. There is no licensed vaccine or specific antiviral drug for Bundibugyo virus disease. Control depends entirely on early isolation, contact tracing, and supportive medical care. Now let us look at how the disease actually progresses in the body. In the early stage, patients develop high fever, severe fatigue, headache, muscle pain, joint pain, and sore throat, resembling many common viral infections. The disease then moves into a gastrointestinal stage with vomiting, severe diarrhea, and abdominal pain, causing dehydration and rapid physical weakness. In the advanced stage, severe cases may develop liver and kidney failure, followed by internal and external bleeding or hemorrhage due to widespread organ damage. Now think about this. Because the early symptoms so closely mimic common fevers, infected patients may not be isolated immediately, and without proper personal protective equipment and infection control measures, hospitals themselves can become centers of transmission. Adding to this, armed conflict, displacement camps, and weak healthcare systems in eastern DRC make surveillance, isolation, and contact tracing extremely difficult during outbreaks. And frequent movement across the DRC-Uganda border increases the risk of regional spread, which is exactly why neighboring countries must strengthen surveillance, laboratory testing, and border health preparedness. So, to quickly recap for your exam, Bundibugyo virus disease is caused by a species within the Orthobola virus genus, with fruit bats as the suspected natural reservoir, an incubation period of 2 to 21 days, and a case fatality ratio of 30 to 50%. Remember, there is no approved vaccine or treatment. Diagnosis depends on PCR and antigen or antibody tests, and the disease progresses through an early feverish stage, a gastrointestinal stage, and finally, an advanced hemorrhagic stage. This combination of high fatality and no approved treatment is your elimination anchor for any question on this topic. Let us now move to our third topic, Vikram-1, India's first private orbital rocket. The context here is that Hyderabad-based space tech startup Skyroot Aerospace has announced the launch window for its maiden test flight of Vikram-1, named Mission Agaman. So, what exactly is Vikram-1? It is a 7-story tall multi-stage orbital launch vehicle designed to carry small satellites into low Earth orbit. Named after Dr. Vikram Sarabhai, the pioneer of the Indian space program, the rocket represents a major leap from suborbital test flights to full-scale commercial orbital operations. Now, coming to who developed it. The rocket has been completely designed, developed, and manufactured in-house by Skyroot Aerospace, a Hyderabad-based private space startup founded by former ISRO scientists. For prelims, note this carefully. Skyroot recently achieved unicorn status with a valuation of over $1.1 billion, and this kind of specific figure is exactly the sort of detail UPSC likes to slip into a statement. Let us now understand the aim of Mission Agaman. The mission is christened Agaman, a Sanskrit word meaning arrival, symbolizing the arrival of India's private sector on the global orbital launch stage. In terms of the target orbit, the flight aims to place payloads weighing up to 350 kilograms into a 450 kilometer low Earth orbit with a 60-degree inclination. Now pause here and lock this in, because this cluster of numbers is very testable. 350 kilograms of payload, 450 kilometers of altitude, and a 60-degree inclination. Now, coming to the key features, let us go through them one by one. The entire rocket is built using an all-carbon composite structure, using advanced lightweight carbon composite materials, which ensures the vehicle maintains high structural strength to survive extreme launch forces while shedding critical weight to maximize payload capacity. Vikram-1 also uses in-house solid and liquid propulsion systems developed entirely by Skyroot, and here is a lovely detail for prelims. The first 3 stages utilize powerful solid rocket motors named after Dr. APJ Abdul Kalam. The vehicle also integrates cutting-edge 3D printed engine components, which allow for rapid manufacturing, lower production costs, and greater design flexibility compared to traditional machining. It has also been given a high launch cadence design, explicitly engineered for rapid assembly and high-frequency launches, catering to the fast-paced demands of global small satellite operators. And importantly, Vikram-1 is an evolution from Vikram-S, building directly upon the foundational technology validated by the successful suborbital launch of the smaller Vikram-S rocket under Mission Prarambh in November 2022. Do not confuse Vikram-S with Vikram-1. The former was a suborbital test flight from 2022, while the latter is the full orbital vehicle we are discussing today. This is a classic elimination point. Now, let us look at the significance of this development. And here, I want you to note each point as a distinct, independent fact. A successful Vikram-1 launch will demonstrate that private Indian companies can independently build and launch orbital rockets, advancing India's space sector reforms. Vikram-1 also strengthens India's position in the global small satellite launch market by offering reliable, cost-effective launch services for commercial satellite constellations. So, to quickly recap for your exam, Vikram-1 is Skyroot Aerospace's orbital launch vehicle named after Dr. Vikram Sarabhai, aiming to place up to 350 kilograms into a 450-kilometer low Earth orbit with 60-degree inclination under mission Agaman. Remember its all-carbon composite structure, its 3D printed engines, its solid rocket motors named after Dr. APJ Abdul Kalam, and its lineage from the suborbital Vikram-S rocket launched in November 2022 under mission Prarambh. This is absolutely critical for prelims, so do not skip these names and numbers. Now let's move to our fourth topic, the Borjuli Wetland. The context here is that the Borjuli Wetland in Assam has been officially notified as a Biodiversity Heritage Site to protect its unique population of Oriza rufipogon, a disease and pest-resistant wild rice variety. So, what exactly is this wetland? The Borjuli Wetland is a biologically unique freshwater swamp and marshy ecosystem that acts as a natural gene sanctuary. It is celebrated as one of India's most critical habitats for preserving crop wild relatives, particularly primitive varieties of wild rice. In terms of location, it lies in the Sonitpur district of Assam, nestled within the fertile, flood-prone plains of the Brahmaputra River Valley. It is fed by seasonal monsoonal runoff and local alluvial water channels, creating a dynamic wetland environment that naturally cycles between intense flooding and waterlogged conditions. Let us now understand its key biological characteristics. This wetland serves as a natural refuge for Oriza rufipogon, the direct evolutionary ancestor or progenitor of Oriza sativa, the domestic rice cultivated globally today. For prelims, note this carefully. Oriza rufipogon is the wild ancestor, while Oriza sativa is the cultivated species we consume. The wild rice plants inside this ecosystem have spent centuries adapting to local conditions, developing strong genetic resistance against destructive agricultural pests and fungal or bacterial diseases. These plants also show high environmental tolerance, uniquely adapted to survive extreme weather, enduring long periods of complete flooding and handling saline water conditions without dying. This entire site functions as an in situ conservation model, backed by the ICAR National Bureau of Plant Genetic Resources and the Assam State Biodiversity Board, serving as a live, evolving field laboratory where wild strains are preserved directly in their native environment. Let us now pause and understand what Biodiversity Heritage Sites, or BHS, actually are, since this concept applies far beyond just Borjuli. A Biodiversity Heritage Site is a legally protected geographic area defined by unique, ecologically fragile ecosystems. These sites feature a rich diversity of wild or domesticated species, unique crop varieties, rare or threatened wildlife, or valuable fossil beds. Now, coming to the statutory features, and this is where prelims questions are most likely to come from. BHS are notified under Section 37 of the Biological Diversity Act, 2002, by state governments in close consultation with local administrative bodies and village committees. Their conservation purpose is to protect fragile ecosystems, including wild crop relatives, sacred groves, high-density wildlife corridors, and wetlands that fall outside the traditional national park or wildlife sanctuary network. Do not confuse this with national parks or wildlife sanctuaries, since BHS specifically cover ecosystems that fall outside that network, and this is a classic trap UPSC could set. Governance is community-led, managed by local biodiversity management committees, or BMCs, ensuring that conservation efforts support rather than replace traditional community access and sustainable farming methods. Finally, on financing and technical oversight, BHS are regulated under the guidance of the National Biodiversity Authority or NBA, with funding from central agencies like the National Rainfed Area Authority or NRAA to improve long-term food security and climate-resilient agriculture. So, to quickly recap for your exam, the Borjuli Wetland in Sonitpur district, Assam, has been notified as a Biodiversity Heritage Site to protect Oryza rufi pogon, the wild ancestor of Oryza sativa. Remember that BHS are notified under Section 37 of the Biological Diversity Act 2002 by state governments, managed locally by biodiversity management committees, and overseen by the National Biodiversity Authority with NRAA funding support. This NBA versus BMC distinction between oversight and ground-level management is your elimination anchor here. Now let's move to our final topic for today, the Gulf of Aden under mapping. The context is that the Indian Navy's mission-deployed stealth frigate INS Trikand successfully foiled a piracy attempt on the merchant vessel MV Golden Arsenal in the Gulf of Aden. So, what exactly is the Gulf of Aden? It is a highly strategic, deep-water marine basin that forms an essential choke point link within the global maritime trade highway. It covers an area of roughly 205,000 square miles or 530,000 square kilometers and acts as the vital hydrographic gateway connecting the Red Sea to the open waters of the Arabian Sea and the Indian Ocean. Let us now look at its location carefully, since mapping questions love precise boundaries. It is bordered by Yemen to the north, Somalia and Somaliland to the south, and connected to the Bab el-Mandeb Strait via the Gulf of Tajura in the west. On its eastern boundary, it opens into the Indian Ocean, geographically framed by the meridian of Cape Gardafui to the south, extending past the Socotra archipelago and the Kuria-Muria Islands to the north. In terms of dimensions, it measures approximately 920 miles or 1,480 kilometers in length and maintains an average width of 300 miles or 480 kilometers. Now, coming to its key geological features, let us go through this cluster carefully. The Sheba Ridge is an active mid-ocean ridge where seafloor spreading creates new oceanic crust through continuous tectonic activity. The Alula Fartak Trench is a deep trench reaching 5,360 meters, formed by faulting along the Sheba Ridge, and it marks the Gulf's deepest point. This is a very specific figure, so pay close attention to it. In terms of continental drift, the Gulf of Aden formed about 35 million years ago as the Arabian Plate separated from the African Plate. There are also complex hydrographic flows here. Indian Ocean water enters through the Bab el-Mandeb Strait to compensate for heavy Red Sea evaporation, with currents shaped by monsoon winds. And ecologically, this is a highly productive marine ecosystem, where seasonal upwelling brings nutrient-rich waters to the surface, supporting plankton, fisheries, sea turtles, whales, dolphins, and tuna. Let us now look at its significance, and again, treat each of these as an independent point. The Gulf of Aden carries nearly 12% of global trade, linking the Suez Canal with the Indian Ocean for oil and cargo transport. Due to piracy threats near Somalia and Yemen, international navies, including the Indian Navy, regularly patrol to secure merchant shipping. So, to quickly recap for your exam, the Gulf of Aden connects the Red Sea to the Arabian Sea and Indian Ocean, bordered by Yemen to the north and Somalia to the south, with the Sheba Ridge and the 5,360 meter deep Alula Fartak Trench as its key geological features. Remember, it formed about 35 million years ago through the separation of the Arabian and African plates, and it carries nearly 12% of global trade, which is why the Indian Navy, through vessels like INS Trikand, regularly patrols this route against piracy. This trade and piracy combination is your elimination anchor for this topic. And with that, we come to the end of today's session. Today we covered the Employees Provident Funds Scheme 2026 from GS Paper 3 Economy, the Bundibugyo Virus Disease and Vikram-1. India's first private orbital rocket from GS Paper 3 Science and Technology, the Borjuli Wetland from mapping, and the Gulf of Aden under geography and mapping. These topics are important from the perspective of both the prelims examination and GS Paper 1 and GS Paper 2. For the complete current affairs article and today's practice MCQs, visit insightsonindia.com using the link given in the description. Also, subscribe to the Insights IAS YouTube channel and join our official Telegram group for regular UPSC-related updates and learning resources. Thank you for joining us today, and we will see you again in the next session.